if I'm going to make a career change, I've got to do it now. And I fell in love with the hospitality industry. And luckily, one of the managers there at Spago, he was like, hey, I'm getting ready to open the restaurants at Neiman Marcus. So I think you have a lot of potential. You just graduated from college. You want to work as a manager, managing the restaurants at Neiman Marcus. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I went from making, $120,000 in cash a year to making $28,000 a year. And all of it was taxed. Yeah. And I was like, what?
What just that?
What the heck did I do? But I'm so thankful I did it, because, to those people that are career servers, and there's a lot of them, and they make great money, but I knew that wasn't for me. I wanted something different. I wanted to use my brain. I wanted to grow professionally. I didn't want to just, take orders and serve food and serve wine every single day.
Man, I'm already fired up for this. So you've already opened the floodgates to all kinds of great things about what we can cover here, man. And we'll get to that fun piece of dialogue there. But there's you, there's Raul, and I've got my fun Latin background, man, so I could throw out the ooh,
Raul,
Raul. So let me slow that down for you folks, Raul. We have briefly known each other,
mm-hmm.
and I believe in that. Those catalysts, are the generators of great things, and so we did the Ron interview, and then we had connected on social media, and I reached out to you. I did a little homework, and I was like, you know what? I think this guy would be great to have come on. So I reached out, and ladies and gentlemen, here he is.
Thanks
for
having me.
He just got back from San Diego and Anaheim doing Disneyland with his family. I mean, how fun is that? But dude, where does it all start for you? Are you a Vegas born guy? No.
I was born in Mexico. I was born in Mexico.
This gets even sweeter.
Yeah, no, I was born in Mexico. My parents were successful business people. My mom owned a restaurant and a music store. Back when music stores were a thing, you would have to go to a building to buy a record.
Who would have thought?
She owned kind of like a El Pollo Loco kind of restaurant and a music store. And my dad was in the banking industry. And they lost everything in, the Mexican economy, the Mexican corruption and the government and the Mexican peso devaluation. Lost everything and literally packed up one suitcase, sold everything, sold all the businesses, and lost a lot of stuff too. And we emigrated to the first city we landed in was Houston, Texas when I was 5 years old.
Okay.
So 36 years ago.
Okay.
With literally nothing but a suitcase, like, what you see on TV, crossing the border, running through the ditch. And I remember helping my mom up the ditch because she couldn't get out. My dad had a permanent, he was legal.
Okay.
We crossed the border illegally. And I was actually illegal. And Houston, Texas, my dad started working in the construction industry. Moved to Phoenix, and very shortly, when I was like 8 years old, we moved to Las Vegas.
Wow!
Because Vegas was the fastest growing city in the country. There was a lot of construction going on, so my dad started. There was a lot of work for him here.
Okay.
We moved here when I was a little, I think, right before I turned 9, and we lived at the Desert Inn Motel on Fremont Street.
Wow!
Because we didn't have a home, right?
Okay.
And we were. I didn't know what it was. We were in the seedy, back, if you go to it, when I get too high from my britches, I like to drive by and remind myself of where I lived for a couple of weeks, where my parents had to live. And I remember writing letters, to my friends back in Mexico, like, oh my God, we're living in Las Vegas and we're living in a hotel. And to me, as a 7-8-year-old kid, it was cool, right?
Yeah.
But we were living in a motel with prostitution and drugs and in the middle of nowhere. And just by luck, my dad found a home. A few weeks later, found a good job, and raised the three of us. Stay-at-home mom because none of us could work. Obviously, the kids, we were all young, and my mom she wasn't legal, so she couldn't work. And raised the three of us. Adopted 3 of my cousins.
So 6
kids at one point.
Okay.
Cousins of mine in Mexico that wanted to come to the United States for a better opportunity and to better themselves, and they were young, 12, 13, 14 years old, and he adopted all of them and raised all of us, and started in the hospitality industry, and clawed my way up there,
Unbelievable.
little by little.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
See, that alone by itself brings me to this place where now, I mean, I think I can probably focus this entire conversation on life in Mexico and immigrating from there to Houston and watching what I feel like you see on TV nowadays, which is people don't want to let anybody come across the
Right,
border. And
yeah.
yet here you are coming across it the way that they portray it on the
Yeah.
big screen and
Yeah.
in the news and stuff like that.
We
right?
hired one of those coyotes, which are the human smugglers, and I remember we stayed at their house till it was dark, and he had a wire cutter, cut a hole in the fence, and we crawled down and we ran, and we were on the freeway right in Juarez, which is El Paso,
Yep.
on the other side of El Paso. My dad was waiting for us a couple blocks away in the car, and he was like, "All right, let's go." And we ran across, we got up the ditch, ran across the freeway, and walked up in the dark a couple blocks. My dad jumped in my dad's car. My dad paid him, $2,000, if I remember correctly, which at that time for us was a fortune. And off we went. And I remember sitting in the back seat of a station wagon. It was a blue station wagon. And, back when you didn't wear seatbelts, and we were in the back where the luggage usually goes. And I remember, looking out the window, and every single car that would come by, my heart would just race because I thought it was immigration coming to arrest us and take us back to the country. And yeah, it was.
Were there preparatory conversations going on between you and mom and dad and kids? And it's like, okay, kids, like, we're going to go for this. We're going to try this out. If it doesn't work, there's a chance we get separated, and who knows where you end up. It's like, are you preparing for doomsday? Or
no. I mean, I was young, so I don't think you know what's a good question for me to ask my brother and sister if they had any conversations with them about it. I didn't.
Okay.
I just remember, having a very privileged life in Mexico.
All right.
Going to private school, having a live-in nanny and a maid, and my parents working and doing well and living in an affluent part of town, and then all of a sudden it was all gone.
Right.
I've asked them since then, and it was just the economy. It was bad management. It was the Mexican peso devaluation, and literally the country went from a pretty affluent country to extreme poverty. And my dad, at that time, they were allowing, if you could prove that, I hope I'm not putting my dad in any legal trouble, if you could prove, or if you had proof that you knew how to work the fields, because they needed field workers to pick fruit and all that stuff. If you could prove it, that you automatically got permission to enter the United States and work. So my dad, my grandfather, my dad's dad owned a farm, and basically just wrote a letter saying, yeah, my son is in the farming industry. He knows how to grow vegetables and pick fruit and all that. And obviously it wasn't true. My dad never worked in the farm. My grandfather just had it. And that's how he ended up getting legal status to come and work. And the rest of us, I was illegal in this country until I was 17.
Wow.
I didn't become a citizen until I was right before I got married to my husband, so almost 10 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you have trouble getting work because of that early, or were
No,
you able to?
I worked for the Review Journal. I sold newspaper subscriptions door to door when I was 15 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, and because I knew that my dad was providing for us. We had a home. I never went hungry. We had clothes. All the basic necessities. But I felt really bad asking for things that I wanted. So I was like, well, then go out and get it. Go get a job. Yeah. So I found and I sold subscriptions to the Review Journal. I don't know how. I think. Oh no, I do actually. Yeah, I went to the swap meet on Bonanza and Eastern and bought a fake Social Security card.
Wow.
And started working, at 15, selling subscriptions to the newspaper, and then In-N-Out Burger, and then I was struggling because I was a pretty good student. I graduated 4.3 GPA from high school, all AP classes, and I wanted to go. My dream was to go to a prestigious university, and I couldn't because I couldn't qualify for any scholarships because my parents couldn't afford it, and I couldn't qualify for any scholarships, even though I had the grades and I was senior class president, and I had all the right. I played sports. I had all the right stuff in my resume to qualify for scholarships, and I couldn't. So I ended up going to UNLV. which was a great experience. And then went to Florida International University and got a degree in international business. And I mean, I remember working and going to school since I was 15 and a half years old.
Wow.
And I never stopped until obviously I graduated college.
Sure.
And for me, that was like, oh, now I can just work. I don't have to go to school on top of that. So
you never know what parallels you're going to have in life. I sit here and smile inside because I, at one point, considered going to FIU.
Oh, really?
I never went.
Yeah. It's a great university.
Yeah, because I had family that lived in Miami. So I was like, I want to get out of Vegas. This is, I think I'm like 18, 19, 20, in that range. And I went through the process and started applying, but then I stopped. And so it's funny that you bring that up because there's always these unique synergies where you start finding these alignment points, right? However, I do want to go back to, I'm really going to concentrate on that situation of coming from, you said you had a great life in Mexico. The values and principles that you were able to download from your mother and your father from Mexico and having that quality of life, and then shifting over to America where you had to almost fight for what it is you earned into, and then the family shifting from that to here, construction, your mom staying at home. What were some of the core tenets that stayed true or that your mother and father passed into you that shaped you, that helped guide the family, lead the family? And I think where I'm going with that is because you had one extreme, which was privilege and good life and big business in Mexico, and then it almost ripped away from you, and now you have to go off and do something different. How does that dynamic influence you all as a family, because you went from what seemed like a great life to now you're fighting again to earn a life again? Would you mind shedding some light on that?
For me, it instilled in me a work ethic that I think is one of the biggest assets that I have, and that has helped me in my career. Sure. I remember when my dad, started working in construction and in Vegas, right, in 115-degree weather in the summer, and he would wake up at 4 a.m. and he would go to work. So by the time that we woke up to go to school, he was gone. And then we would come home from school at like 2:30, and we would, do our homework and do whatever. And I remember my mom was very adamant, like, let's get everything out before your dad gets here. If there is anything we need to talk about, any issues, because when your dad gets here, we want to make sure he's at peace. He's coming into homework is done. No one's fighting. We've addressed whatever's going on. We're good. And he would get home at like 4 a.m. 4 in, dirty. He wore all whites, and he did drywall, and so covered in that white substance that they put on. I can't remember what it's called.
Like a dusty thing
mud.
That comes
well,
off.
Yeah, like a white
putty.
Mud kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I remember it's like, just let him take a shower. Let him get out of the shower. He'd get out of the shower. He was starving, obviously, so we would eat dinner as a family really early, like 5. He would have a tiny little shot of tequila, and he would just watch TV and just hang out. And so for me, it was the work ethic, And my mom, as soon as she got a green card, which was probably early high school, she started working at the Four Seasons. She was a maid at the Four Seasons. So for me, it was like, you know what? No matter what circumstance, what education, what opportunities you have, you've got to work hard. It's up to you. It's up to you to make your path. Some of us, I've been very lucky to have great mentors in my career, great people that believed in me and gave me opportunities. But at the end of the day, it's about your work ethic. Do you wake up every day? Do you go to work? Do you put in everything you have? And I think that's what I learned from my mom and dad. They went from business owners to a maid and a construction worker, and they were. I don't remember. I don't know. Internally, I'm sure there was a lot of things going on with them, but I don't remember them ever complaining. I don't remember them ever whining or like, woe is me, like, oh my God, look, we went from this life to living at the Desert Inn Motel on Fremont Street. And I don't remember them complaining about it.
Sure.
I remember always having food on the table. I would remember always having a roof and just being whatever little vacations we could take. We would go camping and we would I mean, I didn't go to Disneyland until I was 17 years old. And, for me, it was, I know for them, it was a humongous expense, right?
Sure.
So they provided as good as they could. They worked hard
yeah.
and they never complained.
Yeah.
And I remember them always wanting to retire. They're like, oh, we can't wait to retire. We can't wait to retire. And they retired and lasted 6 months. And then they opened up I'm jumping way ahead, but they moved back to Mexico to be close with their siblings.
Okay.
And luckily back then, all 4 of my grandparents were still alive. So to be close to their
Sure.
parents, we obviously were all grown and some of us were married. And so they were like, we're going to go back to Mexico. And they opened a little business in Mexico.
That's great.
And I was like, what happened to retirement? They're like,
we can't.
Yeah, and then they moved back when I had our son, when Alec, our son was born. And then they started working for me. They were like, my dad, we'd wake up at 8 in the morning. My husband would be like, on the weekends. And he'd be like, your dad's in the backyard. Like, what's he doing? And he's like, just chopping trees, or I don't know, he's watering plants. And he was like, you got to get rid of your gardener. You can't just pay people. I'll do it. And I was like, okay. And then our son was really young. And so he wasn't like preschool age or anything like that. And we didn't feel comfortable with daycare yet. So they took care of him for 3 years, sorry. And I paid them. So they've always worked until like maybe 5 years ago, that they've always worked their whole life. And
that's a blessing, man.
Yeah.
That's a big blessing. And it's because I think today there's this sense of entitlement to the world. And it's like work ethic. It's like, who likes to work? It's like, I ask and I get.
It's
right?
weird. It's weird to me. Like I hire people and it's a different, kudos to them. I didn't have the balls to do that when I was their age. I'll hire somebody and like 6 months later, they're asking me for a raise and a promotion. And you're like,
what you do?
Like, what are you talking about? A raise and a promotion? Or like, we opened up resort. So I was part of the team that opened up Resorts World. That's how I know Ron. And, we got really lucky that we had the opportunity to promote our assistants, our coordinators really fast because there was a lot of growth and a lot of movement. And, 6-7 months later, every 6 months, they were like, we're ready for a promotion or a raise. You're like, it's not how life works, man.
Exactly.
That's not how life works.
I don't want to give you this false expectation that this is the way it's always going to be, right? That's tough.
Yeah.
No. So that's fantastic, man. I think there's a lot of roots that, drive the fruits over time. And it sounds like you had some good baseline there. So you talked about UNLV and FIU and you finished school, international business at FIU?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, yep.
So you went to Miami for that?
I did. I went to Miami. I actually moved. So we were at UNLV and my best friend at that time, Shannon, we were sitting in a history class and I was senior class president. She was student body vice president or something. We were both very active in school and we had great grades. And she looks at me, she goes, what are we doing? We weren't supposed to be at UNLV. And I'm no shade to UNLV. We were just, we wanted to go, travel the country and go to live in a dorm and have that college experience, right? We didn't want to stay local. And she was like, let's go. And she's like, where would you want to go? And I said, San Diego. My dream university at that time was University of San Diego. Okay. And she was like, nah, that's too close. And I was like, well, then Miami. And what she didn't know is I was about to come out of the closet. And I knew Miami was one of the gay capitals of the world, and I was like, well, I'll do that there while I'm there, get away from the family, and that's really. We didn't do much homework on FIU. It's a wonderful university, and we were so lucky that we ended up going there. Majored in international business, and I thought I was, I speak the language. I minored in French, so I took French, and I was like, I'll work for an international company, and I'll travel the world, and blah blah blah. And through that, I worked in restaurants. I worked for Wolfgang Puck Spago as a busboy. I worked at Anthony Bourdain's Leal restaurant in Miami as a busboy as well. And fell in love with the industry, fell in love with the money. I was 21 years old, making $100, $200 a day in cash at that time, 30 years ago. That was a lot of money. And it was hard. And I remember being at Spago. So I moved once I graduated. We moved back to Vegas, and I went back to Spago, and as a server now. And I remember looking at career servers. What we call in the industry career servers.
The ones that are doing it for a long time. They make six figures at the nicest restaurants in town.
Yep. And at that time, Spago was it, right? There was no fine dining restaurants. It was Spago and buffets and like casino steakhouses.
What year was this?
2000, so 97 through 2000 to 2000.
Okay.
And it literally was just Spago when it was at the Forum Shop. So we were busy every day. We met all the celebrities you could possibly meet. It was crazy. I met so many cool, awesome stories and people there. But I remember looking at a guy, and he was, you're making $100,000 a year cash, and there's no tip compliance yet. So they're taxing you nothing, right? You're paying zero taxes basically. And he was so bitter and unhappy, and he was an older gay gentleman that I looked up to. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to do that. I don't want to go. I don't want to end up like that. So if I'm going to make a career change, I've got to do it now. And I fell in love with the hospitality industry. And luckily, one of the managers there at Spago, he was like, hey, I'm getting ready to open the restaurants at Neiman Marcus. So I think you have a lot of potential. You just graduated from college. You want to work as a manager, managing the restaurants at Neiman Marcus. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I went from making, $120,000 in cash a year to making $28,000 a year. And all of it was taxed. Yeah. And I was like, what?
What just that?
What the heck did I do? But I'm so thankful I did it, because, to those people that are career servers, and there's a lot of them, and they make great money, but I knew that wasn't for me. I wanted something different. I wanted to use my brain. I wanted to grow professionally. I didn't want to just, take orders and serve food and serve wine every single day.
Are you starting at that point to identify, do you know more exactly what it is you want? Or are you just saying to yourself that part where you're saying, I know I'm not this.
Yeah.
I'm not just a server. And so because of that, you start going into management, and management leads you to this. So how are you determining and deciding the next steps or pathway at that point?
A lot of it was being in the right place at the right time, but seeing the opportunity and taking it, and not being afraid to jump in. And if it's something completely different that I've never done, I'll figure it out. The shift from from server to manager came really easy. It was just, I didn't want to be a career server. I wanted to do something else. I wanted to have a desk. I wanted to have a business card. I wanted to grow professionally, and I thought I was at the right time. I didn't have any responsibilities. I didn't own a house. I wasn't married. I didn't have kids, any of that. So yeah, it was hard going to $28,000 a year, and after taxes, it was like $525 every 2 weeks, but just seeing opportunities at Neiman Marcus, for example. We opened the restaurants, and at Neiman Marcus, the restaurants are really an amenity to the shoppers because they make all their money in retail.
Is this the one at Fashion Show?
The one at Fashion Show.
Okay.
Unfortunately, for some of the people that I worked with, didn't work out for them, and I jumped in. And I went. Terry Mansour was the general manager of the store back then, and I said, I remember, I asked her if she could meet with me. I was a low-level employee meeting with the general manager of the store. I was, had never had a one-on-one conversation with her. I said, listen, I know you just got, you had to let go of some people, and I want the opportunity to move into those positions. I know I don't have a lot of experience, but I have a good work ethic, and I'll figure it out. Give me a chance. And she was like, okay. So she made me the manager of the Neiman Marcus Cafe, which is still there. The fine dining restaurant Mariposa closed, but I became the manager at the Neiman Marcus Cafe, and excelled at it, did well, grew. And my boss at that time, so the original boss that hired me left, and Kelly Sumner became the general manager there. And her and I just clicked. And she got the job to open up Olives at the Bellagio.
Wow.
And she was like, I'll take you with me. And I was like, I'll make you the assistant general manager. I was like, what? And I was super scared. And everyone I worked for that worked for me at that time was older than me.
Wow.
This is now 24 years old.
Wow.
And Olive's is one of the most successful restaurants in town.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, the new location just closed. But at that time, Olive's at the Bellagio were in the Fountain. I mean, we were the highest grossing restaurant.
Place.
Yeah, it was it. It was it.
Real quick, I want to jump in. Did Elizabeth Blau have anything to do with Olive's? Because she had a lot to do with
all the original restaurants at the Bellagio, just around Wynn as a whole. I think Steve Wynn as a whole, all the rest. She was responsible for bringing a lot of those celebrity chefs after Wolfgang Puck. Yeah, so she was very integrated in all the restaurants at the Bellagio at that time. But I remember just being this young kid and went to Burlington Coat Factory and bought some god awful suits that probably didn't fit. I looked like a clown, and it just started. I was the assistant general manager of one of the busiest restaurants in town, and figuring it out and putting your head down and just not giving up and not being scared.
Sure.
And knowing you're going to fail, but having that confidence to tell your superior boss, hey, I don't know this. I want to learn it. Give me some time. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm going to figure it out. Yeah. And luckily, I've had that great, with George Maloof, with Michael Morton, with Kelly Sumner, with a lot of people in my life, with the tribe now, that they've given me that opportunity to test new things and to grow personally. Absolutely. And the forgiveness, the understanding that I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna study it. I'm gonna figure it out, and then, I thought I was doing great, and one of my friends who I used to work with at Spago, Jesse Shen, was like, "Hey, I just became the general manager of Nine Steakhouse," and I was like, "Oh my god!" At that, and if you remember, Nine Steakhouse back then was it.
Yeah, sure.
That was like the party celebrity. I mean, every night you had
the Palms was it.
The Palms was
at one point too.
The Palms was it, right? So it was like every athlete you could think of, every celebrity, MTV, The Real World, the MTV Awards. I mean, Michael Jackson, every president ate at Nine Steakhouse. And he said, come work over here. And again, like, I'm 25 years old. How the hell did I end up here?
Unbelievable.
And I think that's when I fell in love with the hospitality industry. Mm-hmm. The rest of it, up until then, was me trying to, I studied international business. I speak 3 languages. I'm learning a lot of things, but I'm not sure if this is what I want to do long term.
Right.
And it wasn't until I hit Nine Steakhouse that I really understood that you're not a restaurant manager, you're not a server, you're not a bartender. You provide experiences for people. And if you provide great experiences, they're going to take really good care of you. I mean, Nine Steakhouse, I had people literally at the door. Hey, my fiance and I just walked, we don't have a reservation. It's Saturday night. And they would try to slip you $300, $400, $500. Like, please, I need a table.
Right.
And you're like, look, sir, I don't have a table to give you. Yeah. Like, it's, we would do 700, 800 covers back then. And you would just figure out, pull up 2 stools at the bar, and now all of a sudden you're serving full dinners at the bar, and you're serving full dinners in the lounge, and people are willing to wait 3 hours, and you're kindly asking people to get up and leave. And I'll get you in front of the line of Ghost Bar or Rain, but I need your table. I need you to leave because I've got people waiting 2 hours past their reservation time. And it was just an experience, right? I was like, this is not just serving food and serving drinks. This is creating memories.
Absolutely.
People don't have the luxury of spending. Not a lot of people have the luxury of spending $300, $400, $500 for dinner. Mm-hmm. And if you make the memories, they're going to come back. They're going to figure out how to spend what to do in their life to make sure that they can keep coming back to this restaurant. Absolutely. And that's when I fell in love with hospitality. And then another thing happened there. I was Michael Morton, the owner, the original owner, and Scott DeGraff of the Nine Group. We were the only hotels that had nightclubs and restaurants and day clubs, right? It was Rain, Ghost Bar, Moon, the Playboy Club, Ditch Friday, or what is it called? Soak, the Pool, and then Nine Steakhouse and Nova Italiano. And I was sitting chatting with Michael Morton's wife, Jenna Morton. And she was like, what do you want to do? And I said, well, eventually I want to like get married and have a kid. And I was fully out of the closet by then. And, obviously gay marriage wasn't legal. And she was like, well, it's going to be hard for you to do that working here, no? Because like, what time do you leave here? And I was like, 3, 4 in the morning. She's like, and then you go home, then what? She's like, I was like, we usually go for a drink or, because you're too wound up at that point to go straight to bed. And, I wake up at noon, I go to the gym, I get dressed and I come right back. And then on my days off, I just go to the gym and do whatever. She's like, you can't have a family like that. And she's like, go talk to Erin Matera. And she has an event sales position coming up. And I think you would be great at it. And I went to talk to Erin Matera, and she was like, yeah, I'm going to have an event sales position opening up. I think you'd be great. Everybody loves a gay event planner. And I was like, okay, well, I'll take that as a compliment. She was wonderful. But again, I sat down with her. I said, Erin, I have no idea what I'm doing. I've been managing restaurants my whole life. Now I'm selling and planning events. Like, I have no idea what this is. So she's like, don't worry, I'll train you, I'll teach you. And went upstairs because the office for the event salespeople were right upstairs of 9 Steakhouse. I went upstairs and it was right around the 2008 housing crisis. And corporate business is when there's an economic crisis, convention traveling, client hosting are usually the first things that get cut from corporations' budgets, right? So it was literally, we had millions of dollars in cancellation. And at that time, Obama had gone on TV saying, these companies that were bailing out shouldn't be doing these lavish parties and entertaining clients in Vegas. And so literally the very next day, we had millions of dollars in cancellations. And so Michael Morton said to Erin, well, we've never replaced Raul down at 9 Steakhouse. He can just go back to work at 9 Steakhouse because we still need him. Because social and transient business is still coming, but corporate business is not. And Erin was like, she had been doing this job alone for like 8, 9 years. And she said, I'm not going back to working alone. And they got into a really heated argument. And Erin was like, you know what? I'm not doing it. She stood her ground and she quit. And then I was like, holy shit. I've been doing this for 3 months and my boss just quit. The girl who's supposed to train me just quit. And I remember going to Michael Morton, Scott DeGraff, and Andy Belmonte was the general. I can't remember his title. I think he was the president of the 9 Group. Same thing. Had the same conversation with them. I said, "Listen, I'm going to figure it out. I don't want to go back to 9 Steakhouse. Not that I had anything against it. I love what I'm doing now. I enjoy this 9 to 5-ish job. Give me a chance." And they were like, "Okay, we'll figure it out." 3, 4 months later, they promoted me to an event sales manager. They did hire a director to replace Erin, and Leah Rispoli, who's now over at Virgin, Hard Rock, now Virgin. And again, an opportunity to learn from a great mentor who taught me a lot. And then, they all left to go to Virgin, and I was an event sales manager. And same conversation. I went to George Maloof. I had never had a one-on-one meeting with George. And I said, George, I know you just lost your entire event sales team. Something happened that everyone left except me. Me and the director of banquets, Brian. And I said, to George Maloof, I said, because I knew I was ready to be a director now. I knew I could do it.
Sure.
But I knew I didn't have the experience on paper.
Right.
And I sat across from George and I said, George, I know you don't know me very well. I figured out how to not lose one single client after Erin left, even though she had these amazing relationships with all these people. Give me a chance. Do not hire a director 6 months from now. If I continue to book and sell and we're having great feedback from our clients, then give me the opportunity to be a director. But all I'm asking is for you not to hire somebody right now. Just give me a shot. And he was like, okay. So for 6 months, it was just myself and another event sales manager, and we figured it out, and we grew sales, and 6 months later, I was a director.
Wow.
And I've had many of those opportunities where it's like, all right, I don't know how to do that. Give me a shot at it. If I mess up, I'll ask for forgiveness and I'll fix it and I'll correct it and I'll learn from it and I'll grow. But, just give me a shot. And that's, I think, is another thing. Besides strong work ethic and work is not number one, but it's close to the top because it allows you everything else that you enjoy in your life, right? But having that mentality and then not being afraid to, I'm 43 years old now, not being afraid to learn new things. And people ask me all the time, Tony, why are you still at the Palms? You've had the opportunity to open up Resorts World. You had an amazing job offer to go to Fontainebleau. Why?
Doing the same thing at Fontainebleau? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So tell you that story. Like, I was at the Palms for 17 and a half years. The pandemic happened. Palms closed just like every other hotel in town. The Fertittas were extremely good to me. They relocated most of the executives to other properties. But the Palms did not reopen after, once the rest of the casino started opening up. Right. And they said to me, we value you. We see your work and how much revenue you bring to the resort. You are extremely important to this company. You will not lose your job, but we don't have any position for you anywhere else because, the other station properties don't really do what the Palms can do, with all those amazing venues. But we're not going to let you go. We can't let you go. And so they paid me for a year or so to really just shuffle contracts around, trying to the pandemic's still happening, maybe in October, and then now it's August, and nope, still not. Vegas is still not open. We're still not hosting conventions. Maybe 2021, or just shuffling deposits and clerical work. And then they pulled me aside. Cord Nichols, who's still can't remember his title. He's runs the station casinos, Red Rock Resorts, and Patrick Wallace. They pulled me aside and they said, I don't think they could tell me what they were thinking of doing, but I obviously understood what they were saying, and they said, we value you. You have a job with the company, but we need you to put the Palms in the back. Like, that part of your career is over. We're going to make you the vice president of catering at Red Rock. And then we're going to make the vice president of catering there, Kasha. We're going to start training her to be an assistant general manager of the whole property. So, you guys everything works out. And I was extremely grateful to the Fertittas and to the executive team there at Stations for what they did for me and my family during the pandemic. But I knew that I wasn't Red Rock. I knew that the successes that I was able to bring to the Palms, Red Rock is a very, very different property. And it's a very different business model. And I knew that I wasn't going to convince Amazon, 10,000 people to leave the Venetian and get on a bus and come, like I do now, to come throw a massive corporate event at the Palms. I wasn't going to be able to do that at Red Rock, because you can convince people to leave, the Venetian and take a 6-7 minute bus ride and go to the Palms, but you're not going to convince them to take a 45-minute bus ride to go to Red Rock. So I didn't want to lie to them, and I didn't want to say, oh yeah, all the revenue that I bring to the Palms, I'm going to bring it to Red Rock. That was not true. And so, it was really hard. I had a contact at Resorts World who gave my resume to the vice president there of sales, and started talking to them about it. And it was a really tough decision. And it was an exit that I am not proud of how I exited Station Casinos, because they were very, very good to me. And I my head was in a weird place, because the pandemic, when your job is to bring massive quantities of people together, now what? Yeah. Like, what do I do? This is all I know how to do.
Identity crisis.
Now I'm married. I have a mortgage and I have a child. And I went on vacation without telling them. I don't think I've ever told this story before. I went on vacation without telling them because I didn't have anybody. I reported to someone, but everybody worked at other properties. I was the only person that worked at the Palms, right? So I booked a trip to Puerto Vallarta, and they found out that I was out of town because they wanted to meet with me, and I was like, "Oh, I'm in Puerto Vallarta," and so they were not happy about it, and so that was that was hard for them, I'm sure, and then they found out through someone else that I was interviewing at Resorts World, and that I was pretty much going to be job offered at Resorts World. So they pulled me aside, and they expressed they were disappointed, and I was embarrassed, and I was like, listen, I messed up, but I still think that my career here at Stations is over. And I wrote them all a very nice, what I thought was a very heartfelt letter, just thanking them for everything that they've done for me. They paid me for a year and a half for no reason. And I went to open a Resorts World, and that was an amazing experience. Learned a ton, and but it was difficult. It was a very difficult property to work for. It was very challenging on my side, and I was burnt out. Opening up a resort is one of the most amazing experiences you could ever have. But you're working a lot. Yeah. I mean, I remember 2 or 3 days a week, I would wake up at 2, 3 in the morning, and I'd toss and turn, and I'd be like, you know what, just get up and start working. And 3 in the morning, I'd go to the kitchen, make myself a cup of coffee, open my laptop, and I would start working. I would start sending emails. And that was sad, right? That you were doing that consistently. But what was even sadder was that you were getting responses back at 2, 3 in the morning. So you knew everyone was up at 2, 3 in the morning. Sure. And I mean, I could have worked every there from 3 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night every single day and still not be done with what I had to do. And so, I knew that my time at Resorts World was over, and I was sitting at my desk, and I opened up my phone, and I went on Twitter, and I went on Vital Vegas, and it was like literally, Station Casinos sells the Palms to San Manuel Band of Mission Indians and announces Cynthia Kaiser Murphy as the new general manager. And I know who this lady was, and put the phone down, went on LinkedIn, found her, sent her a message, and said, I'm Raul. I've worked there for a long time. I would love the opportunity to come back. Here's what I did. Here's what I can bring to the property. I know you don't know me, but if you have time to interview me and chat, I'll tell you everything about it. And a week later, I was sitting at a Starbucks with her, chat with Kevin, our assistant manager, and then with her, it was Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I got my formal job offer from Resorts World, from the Palms, to come back. And at the same time, somebody that I knew that wasn't working at Fontainebleau, Tony Yousefi, he texted me and he's like, "Hey, let's have a drink." And I was still at Resorts World, and I was like, "Okay, yeah, sure." He was associated with Carver Steak, so I thought it was going to be like, "Hey, how can we work better together? How can you sell my restaurant more? How can you bring more business to Carver Steak?" Well, lo and behold, we go down to Doghouse, and he's like, "Do you want a drink?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." We ordered a drink, and we're chatting, and he says, "Hey, this is not what you think. This is going to come out of left field. I've asked around. Your name is we didn't know each other. Your name is the one name that keeps coming up. I want you to be the vice president of catering and events sales at Fontainebleau. And there's no interview process. Job's yours." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And he was like, I'll give you all the info. I'll show you the renderings. I'll tell you about the project. It's incredible. It's going to be beautiful. We don't know each other." He's like, "But literally, I've asked everyone in the industry, and everyone says, you've got to hire Raul." And he's like, "How great would it be for you to be the only person in Las Vegas to open up 2 mega resorts back to back? That's an incredible resume builder." And the project is incredible. I mean, I have a lot of info on the side that I've learned while I was in the interview process. Well, not really in the interview process, but I was considering the job. And I got my job offer from Fontainebleau immediately, like 3 days later. And it was really great. It was really, really good. And
so they pay you a salary, a nice big
a
salary,
huge salary. Plus commission. Yeah, so I make money.
plus equity,
plus bonuses and things like that.
Okay,
Yeah. So, but about 50% of what I make is commission. So if you don't, at an executive level, I don't know what any of the executives make, but I assume that my salary is probably definitely the lowest because
you make a lot in commission.
Because I make a lot in commission.
Understood.
50% of my income is commission based. So, but they were offering me because they were close, so there was no money to be made, right? In commission. So they were offering me a very, very nice salary. And it was a hard decision. Do I go back to the Palms? Or do I go open up another mega resort like the Fontainebleau? And it's going to be an incredible property and an awesome project. And I called I have the privilege of having a lot of female mentors, a lot of really great people. And there's a lady named, one of my best friends, Laura Fudali, who's also a business owner. And I called her and we met for a drink. And she knows Tony and she knows the project and she knows, she's very well connected in the industry. And I said, I don't know what to do, man. Like, do I go back? Is it almost like taking a step back? Is it almost like I haven't grown in 3 years if I go back to the Palms? Or do I go open Fontainebleau? And she's like, honey, she calls me honey. She's like, honey, you're not trying to build a resume anymore. You have the resume. You're at the top of your industry. Mm-hmm. You don't need to prove yourself to anybody. Anyone would be lucky to have you. So go do whatever you want to do. If you were 25 years old and you were trying to build a resume and a career and a path and connections, then yeah, you'd be an idiot not to go to Fontainebleau. But go do whatever. And she didn't tell me what to do. She just said, go do whatever you want to do. And I sat with my husband and I was like, listen, this money is crazy. This money is great, but it's home. And he was like, just do whatever makes you happy. Yeah. And I'll tell you, one of the hardest days of my life, when I at the Palms was when I had to fire my entire team in one day. When they decided not to reopen, right? Mm-hmm. And they called me in the office, and I thought I was getting fired at Palms Station Casinos. And they said, nope, you're staying here. But unfortunately, every single person that works for you has to go. We're not keeping anybody. And there's people there, my director of banquets has been there 21 years. My director of catering has been there 12 years. The newest salaried employee manager position that I have working for me, her name is Dolores, and she's worked there 10 years. So these are like really people that I care and I love and I they're part of my family. Mm-hmm. And I had to call them all and fire them.
Did they know or felt like it was coming? Or
they knew because, we all knew. Okay. There was a lot of rumors in the industry, and Vital Vegas at that time was like where you would go because that guy would get info like crazy, like no one else, right? Before anyone else. And unfortunately, I went back to my office and they said, but don't call until we give you the green light. So just give us a few hours. We got to do some stuff on the HR side, and we'll let you know when to start calling people. Well, somehow Vital Vegas got a hold of that, and basically tweeted saying something like, Station Casinos decided not to reopen the Palms and is letting go of all the employees formally soon today. And so then my phone starts ringing off the hook and text messages from all of them because they are all, at that time, Vital was like literally everybody's glued to Vital Vegas. So they knew. Yeah, they knew. So when I called them, everybody knew what I was calling them about. And, there was a lot of tears and a lot of, it was really, really difficult. I think professionally it's definitely the hardest day of my life. And I remember I went home and we went into the kitchen, my husband and my son, obviously, he's 4.5 at that time. So he doesn't know, right, what's happening in the world. He just knows that he's not going to school right now. And he is just, Papa, oh my God, blah, 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 let's play, let's do this, blah, blah, blah. And I had a wave of emotions coming, and I knew I needed, I remember I gave him to my husband. I said, I need to go in the room for a second. And I broke down. It was really, really difficult. So fast forward to the decision that I'm making now is I told each and every single one of them, if there's ever an opportunity that we're going to come back together, I'm going to bring each and every single one of you back. I promise you. And so I picked up the phone and I called some of the executives that had now been working at the Palms under San Manuel. And I said, will you guys let me bring everybody back? And they said, yes, your entire team. Man. And I was like, great. Okay. I accept the job offer. And that was it.
Wow.
I decided to go back to the Palms, and I brought every single manager that worked for me is, there was one that he had gotten a great job, and he was very thankful to that hotel that gave him a job during the pandemic. So he was like, I can't do this to this hotel. But everybody's back. My director of catering, Jocelyn, my CSMs, my event sales managers, my banquet team, 90% of our hourly employees came back. All of our A-list servers came back.
Wow.
And everybody had jobs already. Everybody had jobs, and some of them had great jobs. And they were like, no, we want to be back. We want to come back to the Palms.
Man.
And that for me solidified, that decision. Like, it was a selfish decision because I knew at the Palms I would be happier. I'd probably have a better quality of life, a little more balanced. But it was also the opportunity to keep my promise to bring every single one of them back here.
By itself is worth it.
Yeah.
That ability to go and invite everybody back and say, hey.
They all got a raise too. Yeah. They all came back with a little bit more salary, and we love it. It's just, it's crazy. At that Starbucks meeting with Cynthia Kaiser Murphy, we call her CKM. She was like, what is it? I keep hearing this thing about the Palms. And I was like, you just wait till you open the doors and wait till you meet the employees. And it's just a really special place. There's a crazy loyalty to the Palms. And we've gone through a lot of ups and downs at the Palms. We went from the George Maloof days where it was the hottest hotel in town, packed with celebrities, athletes, anybody who's anybody is at the Palms, right? And it was just making crazy money. Had, the 2008 housing market crisis, that's when George defaulted on the loan and ended up losing the Palms to the bank, Leonard Green and TPG. And that was a really difficult time because Leonard Green and TPG had no I don't think they ever had long-term intentions of keeping the Palms. They took it because it was default on loans, right. And they just wanted to keep it, sell it, and sell it for the highest possible money and make as much from the deal. So they didn't invest one single dollar in that place. If there was one piece of carpet that was ripped, they replaced that one square. If a mirror broke, a mirror broke, right? There's a bunch of mirrors that still work. So there was a very little reinvestment back in the property, and the property went down fast.
Yeah.
And that was a really tough time financially for the property. And then, Station Casinos bought it. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't want to work at a Palace Station or at a Boulder Station type of property. I don't know if this is going to be the right move for me. And a few months later, I had the privilege of sitting with Frank and Lorenzo Fertitta and John Gray at that time and hearing the vision of what they were going to do with the property. They were going to invest $680 million and do this crazy renovation, And I was like, oh man, I'm in. And that's why I decided to stay when Stations took it over, because I was like, this is going to be incredible. And their aesthetic, say what you will, like they are amazing business people, but their aesthetic is I mean, they have impeccable taste.
Sure.
And every time I would see a rendering of a venue, of a bar, of a restaurant, of a nightclub, I'm like, man, this is going to be incredible, and it is. The property's beautiful. It's
because what you see at the Palms now is what they redid.
Yes, correct.
From a front-facing aesthetically, correct?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. They remodeled every single nook and cranny of that hotel, and it's beautiful. And so it made, as somebody who's selling the property, it makes my job a lot easier, and it was really fun, right? And then, unfortunately, there were some bad entertainment deals made, and I'm not sure exactly what happened or all of that, but they decided to sell. They decided not to reopen it after the pandemic, and to sell eventually to the Seminole tribe, the Seminole Band of Mission Indians. And thankfully, I went back because, these people are so in a nutshell, the story of the Seminole Band of Mission Indians is basically they were getting pushed and pushed to less desirable land in California, and they ended up in not Riverside, in
San Bernardino,
the San Bernardino area, right up against a mountain,
mm-hmm.
where there was no running water, no fruit is ever going to grow. And I'm paraphrasing their story, and hopefully you'll get a chance to speak to our chairwoman. But, basically to die. They got pushed to this undesirable piece of land to die. There was nothing growing, blah, 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 blah. They were in extreme poverty, like I said, living in dirt floors, no running water, no electricity. They were sharing a common well. Just trying to survive, right? And they received training on how to open a bingo hall, and they opened up a tent, and they all they had was bingo, and it was crazy busy. And they were like, "Oh my God, maybe we should build a building." And it was a bingo hall. This is like 30 years ago, and they built a bingo hall, and then they were like, "Oh my God, well, they're just making." They can't believe the amount of business that is coming to their property. It was called, now it's called Yamava. I can't remember, escapes me the name. So then they were like, oh my God, this is incredible. We should really put a lot of resources in. So they expanded the casino. They kept expanding the casino, added a second floor. And then but there was no hotel attached to it. There were very little restaurants and amenities attached to it. So they're like, we should build a hotel. So they built this beautiful hotel and a spa and fine dining restaurants and concert venues and all of this. But that was just 3 years ago that they did that. And now they own arguably one of the most successful casinos in the entire world, definitely in North America. You go to Yamava and it's crazy. Like, I heard the stories and I was like, no, you guys are lying. That's not true. Like, there's no way. I heard stories. It's like New Year's Eve every single day. And I'm like, okay, yeah, we've all said that. And then my director of catering and I went, the first time we went to Yamava, we went on a Wednesday. We flew into San Bernardino. We rented a car. We drove down to Yamava, which is 30 minutes away. We get off the freeway and we're like, it's not the most affluent part of that area. And you're like, huh. And then you see at the top of the mountain, this beautiful resort. And we self-parks. We didn't know what the valet was, and and there's at every garage level they have like at Disneyland or like airports directing traffic. At every single level of the parking garage, you're like, damn, this is great. And we walked in on a Wednesday at 4:00 in the afternoon, and I'm kid you not, it's New Year's Eve in Vegas. Like, that kind of volume, that kind of play, that kind of slot. People on the slot machines at the tables, every single table's packed. The restaurants are packed. It feels like New Year's Eve in Las Vegas. And then we went upstairs and we came back a few hours later. So now it's like prime time, right? Like 7:00, 8:00 at night. It was insane. It was insane. I think they have 7,000 slot machines in that hotel.
Oh my gosh.
We have 1,200 at the Palms. I think the Venetian has like 4,000, something like that. They have 7,000 and they're all busy.
Incredible.
They,
Incredible.
Perseverance.
Yeah.
Perseverance. And they're humble, like the most amazing. If the entire board walks in, you would never know any of these people own a casino in Vegas. Jeans, t-shirt, smart as hell, kind, huge work ethic, but without a lot of the ego and the fanfare, I guess, that would come with owning the most successful casino in North America, or one of the most successful casinos in North America, now having a casino here at the Palms. And they own a bunch of stuff, a lot more stuff. They just bought the Waldorf Astoria in Monarch Beach, the golf resort, and they are looking to expand and to grow and to buy other non-casino related businesses, and you would never know.
Yeah. Man, I could listen to you tell stories for hours. And
I talk a lot.
No, but that's okay. Look, these shows are designed to have you be the star. It is not about me. And so when you're rolling, man, I'm listening and I'm loving. I absolutely enjoyed hearing everything that you just said. I've got a question about, kind of just piggybacking off what you just said and by the way, I can go back in what you just said and try to extrapolate all these little nuances of questions that I have. But based on what you just said there with leadership, have they allowed you all some flexibilities and freedoms as leadership at the Palms to be able to, let me ask that a different way. Has who they are influenced the culture inside the hotel at the Palms based on who they are? Because it's coming from the top down and there's a different sense of peace and operations, different than if it's, and again, I'm not even assuming I know, but if it's like heavy, hard-hitting, X company or hotel over there where leadership's always drilling and demanding and beating you up type of thing, has their attitude influenced how you executives operate over there now differently than what you've seen in the past, maybe?
I can't speak for all the executives there, but I would say it definitely has influenced a lot, and myself and a lot of the line level employees. So the Palms, like I said, has always had this weird loyalty, right? We have so many employees that have been there since day one, like 22 years now. And, we've all gone through the ups and downs, and somehow we just love that property and we have a loyalty to it, and we have we want it to succeed. What I will say is San Manuel, obviously, it's very different when you work for a publicly traded company, because it's all about the share price, the price of the stock. It's all about increasing shareholder value, and it's very driven by economics.
Right.
The tribe, the way they make business decisions is they think about 7 generations in the future, right? So it's about, I've learned so much about Native history and none of the stuff that we learned when we were in high school. So the goal back then was to basically kill off the natives, right? And a lot of tribes disappeared and a lot of tribes survived. I think San Manuel has about 200 tribal citizens, is how we refer to them, tribal citizens, descendants of San Manuel. He was an actual person. And so for them, and they operate as a sovereign. I didn't really understand, a native country.
Yeah.
They operate as a sovereign nation. They have their own laws. They have their own territory.
Right.
They have their own police department, their own fire department. They have elections every 4 years. There's a chairperson who's kind of like would be the president of the United States. There's a vice chair. There's, they run for positions, treasurer, exactly, et cetera, et cetera. And they operate very much like a sovereign. They are a sovereign nation, right? And what I understand from it is that for them, it's obviously providing for the tribe, but it's survival as well. It's making sure that it's not only like our chairwoman and her kids, it's her kids' kids and their kids' kids, because there's 200 of them.
Sure.
And so they've got to survive. And so they make business decisions with the mindset of 7 generations in the future. Wow. So How that affects us here at the Palms, I think, is yes, we're here to make money. But, it's not that immediate like return. Okay, we bought this property. Now we want to start making a ton of money. And so let's cut and let's not let's not reinvest, and let's be as efficient as possible and as lean as possible. And we want money now. It's like, okay, yeah, of course we want to make a profit, but we're also super patient. We understand that there's ramp up, that there's we the tribe have to bring our own identity to the property. Sure. And so business, that's how I think is different, that you don't have, yes, you want to make them proud. You want to make sure that you prove to them that there was value in this property, and that's why you bought it. But it's not that daily pressure that comes of like, the share price this month went up, and what's the EBITDA going to be for the quarter, and that. So that's different. But I think from a culture, I have a really cool story. The first time that we had an all-employee meeting, it was a week or so, I think, before we reopened the doors under San Manuel, and I'm sitting in the Pearl Theater, and it's an all hands meeting, right? All employees who were able to attend were invited to attend. I'm sitting next to one of my servers, and it's an older Hispanic lady, and she's getting teary eyed. All the board members, our chairwoman. So our chairwoman is Letitia. Her mom, Carla, is the treasurer. Her cousin, Darren, is the vice chair, and so they're all family. It's all a big 200. They're all related. Wow. And they're all up on the stage, at least our board. And she's crying. My server's crying. And I was like, are you okay? She's like, I never knew that someone who owns a casino would look like me. And I'm like, oh my God, you're so right. This is so crazy. And they're not Hispanic. They're not Mexican. They're Native American. But they look like us. They're people of color. They're wearing T-shirts. They're wearing jeans. They have a ponytail. Darren is just with the polo and khakis and tennis shoes, and they're coming up to the employees afterwards and hugging, like literally hugging them and thanking them, like, thank you so much for coming back, and we're so excited that you're back, and we're just so thankful that you're back, and they're hugging employees. I don't think a lot of casino owners would do something like that. And I've had the privilege of working for some awesome people, but nobody who looked like me before.
That's powerful.
That's nobody who looked like me was standing on stage saying, I own this damn place. And they don't act like it. They're just normal people. The first thing, another really cool story that I also spoke to me about the tribe. Station casinos. I'm trying not to say anything that would be offensive, because it's not. Station casinos invested $680 million to make this property beautiful. But Station Casinos Red Rock Resort is also publicly traded, so I'm sure there's a lot of decisions that I'm not privy to, that I don't know of. But very few back of the house areas were remodeled, right? When the tribe walked in and they bought the property, they were like, the basement of the Palms looked very similar to what it looked like 21 years ago when it opened. Wow. Upstairs is beautiful, gorgeous, billion-dollar property. And they were like, no, we can't. So they had a little bit of money set aside they figured there was going to be some maintenance, some remodels, some, construction, some stuff that needed to be done, right? And ultimately they ended up spending that whole entire chunk of money to remodel the entire back of the house areas of the Palms, because they were like, we can't have our people working, working like this.
Walking into something that feels dated.
Yeah.
Like as if you don't matter, because we're just sending you into this place of potential despair.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, I didn't really understand. I didn't get that part until they explained it. They were like, well, no, the downstairs has to match the upstairs. The upstairs is gorgeous. Like, you guys have one of the most beautiful properties in the entire city. The downstairs area should match that. And so they refurbished the employee dining room, our offices, our locker rooms. They repainted everything. They put new furniture everywhere. And I think that speaks a lot to who they are, right? As people. You know, I've had the privilege of forming a relationship outside of work with our chairwoman. And we went to dinner with them, my husband and I. They invited us up to Yamava to go to Andrea Bocelli concert. And she's like, yeah, let's go to dinner before. And you're just walking in with her and her boyfriend Martin and their kids, and like, no one knows. No one, because they don't act like they're just normal, humble, kind, and they look like me and my husband, right? And we're just sitting there. And I said to Letitia one day, I said, I hope you understand that this doesn't get lost on me. Like, people like me don't have the privilege of sitting across, having a meal and a glass of wine with someone who owns a casino. And she was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, okay, no, lady, you're not understanding what I'm saying. This is not normal. And, you know, it'll be like some random text messages. She'll be like, hey, hope you're having a good day. I miss you. She texted me there. She's like, hey, we found this really cool show. Would you and Ace want to come with us? We kind of miss you and want to hang out again. We're like, yeah, sure. Man. We'll be there. That's and amazing. Like Carla, her mother, is like everyone's grandmother, right? She's older, very, very wise woman. And I went, so I was, you know, she asked me if I would throw her 60th birthday party. And I was like, yeah, sure, of course. So I flew down to Yamava and I met with her. And we met for breakfast. And luckily, she loved everything that I presented to her, because I was prepared to be there for hours, you know. And she's a very strong, very opinionated woman. And it's not something that's secret. She tells you straight up. She knows what she wants and how she wants it. Luckily, all of my ideas, I got this deck, and I was like, well, here's what I'm thinking: the decor, the flowers, the food, the entertainment. You know, then we'll buy out the haunted. She loved like haunted, like spooky things. She was like, we'll buy out the haunted museum. We'll do the Saw escape, and you know, I got a bus, and we'll do margaritas and the whole thing. And she was like, I love it. Great. Okay, son, done. I was like, all right, great. And then she was like, do you guys want to chat? Like, what are you guys doing? We're like, it was my director of catering. And I was like, yeah, we came here to see you. She's like, oh, well, I don't have anything to do. We can get a cup of coffee and hang out. And then we literally sat with her for 2 hours. And she was telling us stories about how the tribe, you know, how she grew up in a very different environment. Her parenting advice of how she raised her kids, and how, you know, they're just awesome people. And we sat there for 2.5 hours just listening to her tell us stories. And she was like, I hope you guys aren't bored. I'm like, no, like,
no way. I
learned so much about you, about how to be a better father in these 2.5 hours. Like, no, it's awesome. I get a call saying, hey, there's Lynn Valbuena, who's a chair of the tribe. Her grandson wants to get married at the Palms. Would you mind meeting with him? Yeah, of course. Like, he owns this place. He said, of course I'm going to meet with him. And I go down, and it's him and his fiance, and they're just like cool. They're much younger than I am. Cool people. And we're texting all the time. And she's sending me screenshots of stuff on Instagram. She's like, what do you think of these flowers? And what do you think of this? And Cody's her name, and Giselle. And I'm like, I don't want to assume we have a budget here. So like, I'm going to throw things that might be crazy or might not be anywhere near your taste level, but I don't know how you roll.
Right.
And they're like, no, we love everything, man. I'm like, all right, this is the craziest wedding I'm ever going to do, because you guys could literally throw the craziest wedding in the world and you love my ideas. And again, they're just showing up, just normal, kind people. Yeah. Very lucky to be working for them.
It keeps you, I can imagine it keeps you, and I'm not directing that at you when I say you, but it reminds you the level of humility that one should have in their life, because for every person that's out there that has an ego and that assumes this level of power because they're wealthy or they own this, you have these other people over here that show you the opposite side of it, where they have the same thing. They just have a completely different attitude, and it makes you almost respect that way more than the other, right? And it kind of puts you in a position to say, do I want to be the asshole, or do I want to be the kind, gentle, loving, spirited ownership group chairperson type? And then you look at yourself and you go, well, I have a pretty good life and I'm doing some incredible things. I want to be like them.
Yeah.
Right? Because you probably deal with a lot of other people too that have
Yes.
a bit of those egos and that
Yes.
are driven that way.
Yes.
And you're like, I'm an executive. I'm a VP. Do I have to be like that? And you're like, no, I get to choose this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Interesting what that will teach you.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of what I want to understand more of. But in fairness of time, we'll have to figure out another way to come back and do another one. Because there's so much to what you've said, so much to unpack. There's two main things, that I want to sort of set up, and I don't know that we'll be able to cover them all. But the first thing was, you talked a lot about the evolution of yourself at such a young age, from position to position to position. I almost at some point, and don't feel obligated to have to answer this all, because I'm just setting it up because I think it's where my thoughts are going, and I'm kind of speaking out loud right now. But there was a new man that had to be developed from an identity point of view at every level to become an executive like you are today. And so I'm curious about that. And then the other thing, I guess, is finally, is there something out there right now that you think is necessary to voice that you didn't get a chance to because maybe I didn't ask the question? What I really, really loved about what you just covered, the amount of ground that you covered with indirect lessons involved in it was supreme. I mean, it was a fantastic, it was like a work of art, man, that you just put us through right there, really, like legitimately. And I could have sat here for days just listening and taking it all in, and then understanding and being a part of that journey. And I'll tell you, you did such a damn good job that I want to go home to my fiance right now and say, we got to go to the Palma some more.
Yeah, you should.
We got to go to the Palma some more. Dude.
We just opened up an awesome Mexican restaurant yesterday.
You sold me on wanting to be at the Palm some more.
Yeah.
Like, I kid you not.
You
so that's probably something we're going to have to put on our
Please
to
do. Let me know.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
awesome.
But I'm teasing out the audience because I was very curious about the evolution and your identity advancements to becoming an executive. Because when you're a young man, you don't know what the heck you're supposed to know. And becoming an executive, dude, that's a transformation. And I love that stuff. We'll talk about that next time.
Yeah.
But I want to understand what else you think there needs to be a voice around that you didn't get a chance to cover, or something else that you want to share, because you're full of experience, knowledge, wisdom, great storytelling. And I'm sure you've got something in there that, could kind of cap us off here before I ask my final question.
Yeah, I mean, I think what shaped me, I would be remiss if I didn't mention how being a gay Latino from a very conservative household, and that, at first when I told my family, they didn't accept me. It was a tough 10 years of my life. And I think that built me into a very resilient person, a very, not in an arrogant way, but I'm going to prove you wrong.
Sure.
And I remember I told my mom the day I told her, she said to me, I remember, and we've had a lot of growth with my parents, and so I was 21 years old and I told her, and she's bawling across the table from me. And she says to me, And I walk around and I kneel down next to her and I said, Mom, it's fine. I'm still the same person.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to cry because I cry every time I tell this story. She said, I had you on a pedestal and for some reason I don't have you there anymore. You are living the life that I wish I had. You're going to college. You have all these amazing career opportunities. You're a good kid. You bought your own house. You bought your own car. You have tons of friends. You're so social. Everyone knows you in the city. That's the life that I wanted. And I couldn't because I had kids and I was in Mexico and living a very different life. And so that hurt. I was like, oh. And, fast forward many, many years later, we had a tough relationship. And finally I confronted her. I said, listen, I'm the same person that I was back then. I'm the same exact person. It's you, the one that changed. You want to have a very superficial relationship with me. You want to talk about the weather. You want to talk about traffic. You want to talk about the news. You don't want to talk about me wanting to get married, me wanting to have kids. So, like, is this going to change or not? And I'm telling you in a very nice way. It was a screaming match at Rain nightclub.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Rain because my office was in Rain. And she was like, you don't call, your brothers and sisters call all the time. You don't come over. And I had it. I was like, well, here's why. And she now loves my husband, worships, my son worships her. We have a great, great relationship. And I just had to realize that she was doing the best she knew how to do as a parent. And that's what she was taught, is that homosexuality was wrong, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that made me into a very resilient person. And you're gonna have these really high highs, which I've had, and I've had some really hard lows. But you just have to keep your head down and keep working at it professionally, personally. I have a lot of faults. I've been to therapy. I've been seeing a therapist for over 10 years now. There's a lot of mental work that needs to happen. There's a lot of growth. You never stop working, stop growing. And there's so many people in my life that are older that have kind of given up. They're just like waking up, watching TV, doing the basics, right? And that's not what life is. Like, you've got to keep it exciting. Go travel the world. Go see different cultures. Go, if you work at what you think is the best resort in Vegas, go see what the best resort in Europe is. Like, we use our money. All of our disposable income goes to traveling. My husband and I love to travel. Get outside. Go. Don't stop growing. That's really it. Be resilient and don't give up. And very few things are going to be given to you. So don't wait until someone gives it to you. Go ask for it. Go ask for the opportunity. If it's not being presented to you,
go get it.
Go sit in front of a George Maloof, a Michael Morton, a Frank Fertitta, a tribal chairperson, and ask for what you want. Because very few, we on the executive, and I have to remind myself now that I'm at that level to give people opportunities. I don't always think about what should my coordinator's next step be? What should my CSM's next step be? I also need them to come to me and tell me what their next step is. I don't necessarily, I'm just as fault as some of my superiors were, and it's not a fault. It's just that you have other stuff going on. And so don't be afraid to go out and get it. Be resilient. No one has it easy. And I think the one thing that surprises most of my executives is I am who I am. You take me for what I am. My current executive is like, no one in my life has ever spoken to me the way you speak to me. And she's joking. We're kidding around. We're laughing our ass off. And I was like, okay, sorry. I don't know what to tell you. This is who I am. I'm not going to stop cussing. I'm not going to, I've watched my mouth pretty good on this podcast. I'm not going to stop cussing. I'm not going to stop, being who I am, because this is who I am. I have to accept myself and love myself, because there was a long, long time that I didn't love myself and I didn't accept myself. I remember praying as a little kid. I literally remember praying to God every night that I would wake up straight the next morning. It was a real prayer that I had every single night. And then the realization came that I am who I am. God made me who I am. There's nothing to be ashamed of. And so if you don't like it, sorry. I come in dressed at the executive meetings, very different from most of the room. I speak very differently, but I have value.
Mm-hmm.
I have a place. I'm valued. I'm a Latino, a gay Latino parent. Take it or leave it. And if you don't, if they don't take you, then go with someone who is going to be on your tribe. Go with someone who is going to be a supporter. That's another thing that I think it irks me, people that complain about their job. Like, oh my God, I don't get paid enough. Oh my God, I work too much. Then go do something else.
Sure.
If you don't like what you do, we all work so hard. We all spend so much time away from our families. If you don't like it, go. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with Resorts World. I think that place is amazing. The leadership, everything is amazing. It just wasn't for me. Sure. I wasn't happy.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to leave.
Yeah.
And you've got to make those hard decisions, dude. You've got to love what you do. Find what it is. Find the right place, the right people to work for, and go do that.
You make it very hard for me to sum up what just happened in that last 5 minutes, man, because that might be what you just said could be the most profound finish to any conversation I've ever had in this setting. Talk about kind of a twist and a just outpour of acknowledgement towards wanting like the one thing, which is the acceptance of your mother, right? And not getting that, but then going into it directly and now looking at it in hindsight beautifully and saying, we're happy now because you decided to be who you are and self-accept and say, I don't care what the rest of the world thinks. I'm going to be who I am.
I know.
Dude, I wish I had the mic drop. I could just do the mic drop right there if we'd be finished. Last question, Raul. I don't know if you've seen the show, but I think you may have answered this to some extent, so I'm going to challenge you to come up with something different.
Okay.
But what does always on the grow mean to you?
Hustling. Hustling.
Yeah.
Never. I mean, it goes back to a little bit of what I said, but just hustle, man. Very few things in life, very few people in life have things given to them. And I came from an immigrant to this country with not knowing one lick of English, living at a seedy, prostitution, drug-ridden motel, put myself through college, am now an executive, had the luxury of being an executive at an extremely $4 billion property, now back at the Palms, which is my home. Never give up, never hustle, man. It's just a hustle. It's a grind.
Yeah.
It's exhausting. It can get exhausting, mentally, physically exhausting. But if you're not doing it, then I don't want to be that person that wakes up at 9 o'clock and watches TV for a few hours and does the basics. Yeah, that's not a life worth living. Yeah. And don't worry about material shit. Like we're all trying to like. There's a different kind of growth. People think that it's about money and house. And my husband and I, have a modest home. We don't dress lavishly. I'm wearing a Banana Republic t-shirt today. We use our money for experiences.
That's right.
We use our money for experiences because eating good, drinking good, traveling well, going out and seeing new cultures, new countries, it teaches you so much more than a university book can, than a 5,000, 6,000 square foot home can ever do for you.
So true.
Oh.
Well, yeah, I think that you are a living example of that motto. So
thanks.
I appreciate you for coming here.
Thank you for
and
having
bringing
me.
your fine experience. I was going to say fine dining, which could have made some sense there because there's some truth to that, right? But this has been an absolute honor and pleasure, Raul.
Thank you.
Is there a place that you're promoting anything outside of coming to see you at the Palms? Do you have social medias or anything like that you want people to come and discover you, find you, follow you?
Yeah, sure.
It's
at Raul Daniels.
Yeah, there it is.
On Instagram, Facebook, all of the above. But yeah, no, I mean, yes, obviously the Palms. Come see the property, come experience the different things we're trying. We're not everything's going to work, but tell us what is working, what's not working, what you like, what you don't like. I'll tell you, the restaurant we opened yesterday, La Popular, La Popular. Everybody makes fun of me and like La Popular. They're like, we can't say that, Raul. It's amazing. So I got the privilege of going to Mexico City. They were like, hey, you're the only executive to speak Spanish. We're thinking about hiring this company. It's incredible. And the coolest thing about yesterday, I posted it on social media yesterday. I looked around, my husband, my son and I looked around, there was a bunch of Mexican people eating. That's when you know that Mexican restaurant's good. Mm-hmm. It's got a good vibe, great food, great drinks. Just opened. Today's they're going to be their 5th day. And it's already good food, good service. You know, because when you open a restaurant here in Vegas, like I don't go to that restaurant for a few months.
Sure.
Okay, you want to give them some time. Yesterday I was like, holy smokes, man. The food, the service, the drinks were fast. Everything was on point. It's got a great vibe. Yeah. Come see the property. Come check it out.
I love it.
Give us a chance.
I'll bring my father, and my father is the toughest food critic ever.
Oh, good.
He used to work in the kitchen and cook and all that stuff at many different properties. And my fiance and I were laughing about this the other day. She's like, your father is the hardest food man to please. Yeah. We could go to the best, what we think is the best restaurant, steak, anything we like. And he would be like, it was okay. That's just my dad.
Yeah.
You know, Colombian guy came over from over there. Now he has his opinions. And so I'm going to bring him over to La Popular.
Your Colombian father would laugh at you for saying it like that.
I know, man. I know. I get my butt beat. I know. Well, hey, man. God bless, brother.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you, man.
Thanks for having me.